be okay. If I had to title this composition that I've come up with, it would be The Israelites, Job, and Noah. Simply titled as that. And this lesson that I've come up with is about nothing simpler than trust. I'm only going to turn you two places in the book, and the first will be Exodus chapter 13. And the second will be Gospel of John, chapter 20. And if you'll just put your finger in there and hold them spots, we'll get right to them. In Exodus 13:21, it says, "Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel." Hold on, I'm in the wrong spot. 13:21, it says, "And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud, night in a pillar of fire, to give them light to go by day and night." Okay. In 13:22, he also says, "He took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people." Put yourselves in the shoes of the Israelites, of the Israelite people for a minute. The Lord leads you, your every step. He is kind and loving enough to give you a visible guide, and you still don't trust Him. I mean, through this book, the Israelites fell short at every turn. It seemed like they were always turning around and saying, it was like a little kid. God said, "Don't touch the cookies." Every time they're touching the cookies. You know, they're always turning their backs to Him. Now, I have this wrote down. It's Numbers chapter 13 and verse 17, if you want to write it down and look it up later. It says, "Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Go up into the mountain, and see the land, what it is, and the people that dwelleth therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many." If they would have simply trusted the Lord, they wouldn't have had to have sent spies. The Lord promised that land to the Israelite people. If they would have just went in, they would have all seen the land of Canaan. They would have all ate of the food. It flourished. But on the other side of that, they had to look, they had to peek. They had to question whether God was right. And they all died in that barren desert. They didn't need to look and see how big the people were there, if the land was worth having, because that was the land God wanted them to have. It's like if God wants you to be there, He's going to make it so you can be there and so you can live there. If He don't want you to be there, it's going to be like the barren desert they died in. It says, I want to pull a few verses from Job, starting with this thought of my own. Job is a case of a man that trusted God. The Lord dropped the hedge and said, this is in Job chapter 1 and verse 12. He said, Unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. That's not the whole verse, but that's the part I'm using. He would only trust God through it all, and the Lord restored him for his trust and faith. Now in Job chapter 42 and verse 10, you can see this. And it said, And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. This is what only trust in the Lord did for Job. it's case by case. You never know what you're going through, whether it be something, because I know I've made a lot of wrong steps in my life. I've taken a lot of bad turns and I've fell in a lot of ditches. But I know that at the end of the day and throughout the day, I can look to my Lord for guidance. And I know that in the end, He's got some kind of plan. I just got to open my eyes to see the road. You may say the Israelites, talking back about in the desert, well, I can do better than those people, thinking if I had that sign, I could follow that sign and I could do what they wanted done or what He wanted done. You might be able to, but in tough times like Job, would you? I mean, it seems like anymore nowadays people will turn and worship any earthly thing that they think will solve it, like anything. Your car breaks down. Well, you need money. Well, I'm not going to church so I can go work. I'm guilty of that. I've done that several times, and I hate to throw rocks at myself, but it's the truth. A lot of people will look for any earthly fix to their problems. They don't want to just look up to the sky and say, God, I know you'll work it out. Now I want to bring into case this idea of trust. The Israelites didn't trust Him. They fell. Job trusted Him and he prospered. I want to bring in the apostles. Even the apostles are guilty of not trusting the Lord in parts. Amen. Whereas in John chapter 10 it says, I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. And in John chapter 10 verse 17 it says, therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life that I might take it again. And then we'll get to the verse I had you mark. John chapter 20 and verse 19. Then the same day at the evening began the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in the midst and said unto them, peace be unto you. Jesus told them, there back in verse 10, He said, I'm going to die, but I'm going to come back. Amen. Now, the disciples, obviously, they either didn't remember it or they doubted it, because they were hid away in this room. They said, well, they got Jesus. We don't want them to get us too. And I don't believe they trusted that He was coming back right then, because obviously it took them by surprise. It was like the doubting Thomas. I have that marked in here too. Okay. Jesus told them, I will die and I will come again. They did not trust that when He was taken by the Jews and hung from the tree. Trust in the Lord and be saved. Accept Him into your heart, because once you are saved, you will always be saved. Trust the Lord and you will strive to be like Job. Some days you will be like the Israelites, but if you are saved truly, you will be like Noah. And in Genesis 8, verse 1, the very first line of the verse, it says, and God remembered Noah. He remembered Noah on the ark, and He'll remember you on the earth today.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Amen.
All I'm trying to say by any of this is, I know I fall short of it, but we must give Him more of our trust. And I know in my soul, down in my heart, that I am saved. And that's the greatest gift, the greatest feeling I've ever had. Because whenever it all fell apart, it all falls apart all the time, it seems like that's the one thing we can fall back on. Now, I know in my case, I just have to step back and trust Him to solve all the other problems, or show me the way to solve them.